Hey guys, Brian here with an update on blockcillin, the 3D game that I've been writing in Dart. Last time I promised a lot of fancy transitions. Blocks were going to explode, things were going to fall from the sky and fall into place. I just pretty much let my imagination go free and ignored reality at the end of that segment. But let's see what I got this time. Everything looks normal, as you can see, and the buttons are a little bit bigger for touchscreen users. But now if you press New Game, the board twists into motion from the bottom of the screen. And when the game's over and the blocks reach to the top of the screen, a new transition takes place. As you can see, the board becomes gray and kind of becomes like frozen. And if you press New Game, something cool happens. The current board twists out and the new one twists back in from the bottom. Likewise, you can press pause to freeze the board again and continue to waken it up again. And just like game over, if you press New Game, the current board twists out and the new one twists back in. Also, if you noticed, I think the animations are a lot smoother this time around as well. And that comes from fixing the game loop a bit. So, the two patterns I really used from Game Programming Patterns book. This amazing book that has taught me everything about game programming. I guess I should really fork over some cash to the author. The guilt is kind of setting in. But when the board rotates in and then shifts to a gradual rising, those are actually two states, and those two states are put into a state queue, which constantly evaluates the first state in the queue until it's no longer needed, discards it, and then shifts the queue and moves on to the next state. There are only a couple things that I had to add to this. And I found out later this method was called push-down automata, and it was kind of highlighted at the bottom of the state web page there. I just never read that far, but I'm glad I wasn't too far off the mark. And one thing I added was the ability to check the current state so that I didn't schedule any states that might end up becoming duplicates. For instance, you can press the pause button here and then maybe quickly press escape, and here you can see the escape was ignored, and that's because it tried to add another set of pausing and paused events, but saw that it was not in a state, it was already in pausing, so that it shouldn't add another one. So that's one fix I made. And another fix that was a little bit more involved and very specific to this application was that certain states are allowed to tell the game loop, the rendering loop of the WebGL stuff, it's okay to stop. So for instance, in this pause state, the WebGL loop has halted and given up control to someone else. Now when I press these menu buttons, new states are queued and the loop again is once again activated with new states. And the states are constantly telling the game, go ahead, you need another update, you need another update. But once a certain state, like the game over state here, says, you can stop, then control is given up once again. So that's another modification I made to the state pattern to make this kind of hybrid HTML/OpenGL game work. And finally, I mentioned before I used some pro tips in the game loop, specifically the fixed time step, or something, whatever it was called, to make the animations a lot more smoother. And here's a picture of the unit tests that Dart set up for me. Well, I wrote these tests, but of course Dart has the facilities to make unit testing easier and comes up with some templates. So that wraps up this episode. Next time, what I'm going to add is the selectors to switch a block and when you press the arrow key it'll move around on the board, and then when you press spacebar it'll swap the blocks. And so hopefully we'll actually have the beginnings of a game and not just kind of a technical demo. So, see you then.